Ladies and gentlemen, today we talk about the rated R superstar Edge, a former Intercontinental Champion, a former Tag Team Champion, a former WWE Champion, a former World Heavyweight Champion, and one of the most creative minds in the business. And his story started at WrestleMania 6 in the crowd for the entire event, watching match after match. And of course, the main event of WrestleMania 6, which was Hogan versus Warrior. And that was the Toronto Skydome, which was a state of the art facility in 1990, and it had its own hotel, and it was one of a kind back in the early 90s. Of course, Edge would make his debut in the WWF in the late 90s with the Brood and be that vampire character. Great entrance, great visuals, you know, didn't really do much at first, didn't really talk, just kind of wrestled. And then him and Christian were finally able to kind of pull away from the group after Gangrel got injured, and they were, essentially able to talk and become more personable and get themselves over with not only their wrestling but their talking ability. And they would go on to have a legendary run as a tag team and create moments that we will never forget in TLC matches with the Hardys, with the Dudleys, with so many incredible teams that culminated at WrestleMania 17, which is still regarded as one of the best WrestleManias of all time, top to bottom. But like everything else, from the 5-second poses, which were a thing of creative genius by both Edge and Christian, from Christian playing the kazoo to Edge winning King of the Ring and them kind of going their separate ways and getting their singles pushes. There was a lot of derailment in Edge's career as well because he faced a lot of injuries. And just as you thought he was getting ready to go, unfortunately something would happen. But once he finally found that that groove and was able to continuously reinvent himself and realize that certain things weren't working and that he needed to change and adapt. He had a great program with Kurt Angle, and he was known as one of the SmackDown Six. And if you don't know who the SmackDown Six were, they were six incredible wrestlers in the mid 2000s that essentially carried the SmackDown brand, and Edge was one of those guys. Of course, he would also be able to tag with Hulk Hogan and become a tag team champion with Hulk Hogan, which was cool and odd at the same time. But he would get his big break at WrestleMania 21, becoming the first ever Money in the Bank winner. And he held that contract until January of the following year when he cashed it in after some controversy with him and Matt Hardy and Lita, which essentially only elevated Edge to the character he became, which was the rated R superstar. And that's a testament to unfortunate circumstances making two superstars better and pushing them to heights we didn't know that they were capable of before that. And then he would go on to feud with, John Cena, win the title multiple times, but his real niche was the SmackDown brand. That was his home. And he had legendary feuds with so many superstars on the SmackDown brand. He was aligned with Vicky Guerrero. He got Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins in the door as his edge heads, which a lot of people don't remember that. But I mean, he essentially used those two guys as lookalikes for him to help him win matches. And would go on to win multiple world championships and face the likes of The Undertaker and Alberto Del Rio and so many more. And unfortunately, his career came to an end too soon. But he had such a legendary and impactful career. I mean, he created so many memorable moments with the 5-second poses, with the Brood and the Bloodbath, and as the SmackDown Six, as a former King of the Ring winner, as the first ever Money in the Bank winner, with rated RKO and defending tag team championships against DX and feuding with greats like Triple H and Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker and Kurt Angle and, so many more. But unfortunately, his neck got to the point where he couldn't do it anymore. And he had to step away. But he also had a very good acting career that he just decided to dive right into and was a part of um, a show that lasted like, a good 5, 6, 7 years. And he was a constant on that show. And he would do other things. And then the impossible happened in 2020. And he came back at the Royal Rumble And it was truly a moment to remember. You get goosebumps just thinking about it. And he had another great run. Um, he faced Roman Reigns, he faced Randy Orton. He created the original Judgment Day. I mean, think about that. What you see on TV today as the Judgment Day was created by Edge. It was his concept, his inception, his idea that has led to every version of the Judgment Day we see today. And he was one of those legends that was on a part-time deal. And that wasn't for him. And he wanted to be a full-time performer because he understood that he didn't have a lot of time left, and he wanted to be able to give back as much as he wanted. So he went to AEW. And he unfortunately has had a few injuries in AEW, but he's also had a lot of great moments in AEW. Whether it be with Christian or FTR or the Young Bucks, and now being able to essentially end his career the way it began with him and Christian as the AEW champions. I think that means more to them than anything they've done in their careers. And it was honestly really cool to see them bring back the 5-second poses. And Edge will always be remembered as one of the greatest wrestlers of his time.